Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. This is going to be my declutter regrets. Whether I regret decluttering any of these? You'll see what I mean. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This is another Declutter Regrets series episode. I've been doing this once a month for I think about a year now, where I've gone over things I've decluttered and tell you about whether I regret getting rid of them or not. However, I figured that I also have eyeshadow palettes in my makeup collection that I decluttered, or that I said I would declutter, and then pulled back into my collection because I would miss them. And I was like, I could feature those as part of a declutter regrets, because these I thought I was going to regret after decluttering, and so I pulled them back in. So these are 10 palettes that has happened to over time. Also a couple where I feel like I should actually declutter these, but because I think I would regret decluttering them, they deserve a space in this video. So let me just get to it. Before we get into the video, it may be good to know who I am and what I like doing on this channel. Just in case you're new here, my name is Maaike. I live in the Netherlands. I have fair skin with a gold to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences how I feel about makeup. I have been reviewing makeup for more than a decade. I love trying out eyeshadow palettes, Esses and Catrice, and getting the use out of my makeup. So if that's something you're interested in, then I hope you'd like to consider subscribing. So let me just get to it. The instigator of this entire video is this guy. I did a Zoeva video last week, and I was like, this one I almost decluttered. I pulled it back out. I need to use it again. It's on the palettes I need to go back to for like I think July or August. I want to use this again. I've already made note of it. I need to select the Zoeva Precious again. So this palette is the entire instigator of this video idea, where I was like, you know what? There are actual palettes where after I had sit down to film my declutter videos, I thought I would regret it if I would declutter them. So rather than giving them away to friends and family, or selling them or throwing them away because they were too old, I ended up pulling them out of my declutter pile. And this is what I always do whenever I declutter products in my home. I tend to never get rid of them straight away. I tend to put them in a box. I hide them from view in a closet, or I just put them somewhere. And then when it's time for me to get rid of things, I go through the entire pile again. Now that I've been able to take some distance from it, because whenever I do declutter videos, I definitely get into this whenever I do decluttering videos, I definitely get into this hamster wheel kind of motion of I need to get rid of everything. And then I definitely sometimes take decisions that I feel like, no, this is still unique in my collection, or it's still different, or it's still something. And I definitely have some palettes here that I know I should just get rid of because they aren't as unique anymore. But then there's some nostalgia link to it. So that's why I figured, let's discuss some eyeshadow palettes today that I nearly got rid of and then decided not to, or that I feel I should get rid of, but because I think I would regret it, I'm not going to. So let's just tackle the Zoeva, the Precious palette. I've called this a very much 2018 kind of trendy color story. I think that's also when this palette came out. We're not really focusing. Here we go. So this is definitely one of those palettes where I'm like, yeah, this is gorgeous. Just looking at it, it's gorgeous. It's also quite warm toned, but these two shades I like. I remember really liking this shade here at the bottom. I think the thing that's really throwing me off is that yellow tone gold in the middle. I think I like these 5 shades and I just don't like this. So it's sort of like, what do I want to go for? And this had just been one that I wasn't using much, because if I think Zoeva, I think 10 pans, and I always forget I have this. But now that I have some of their other smaller palettes, then they can sit together in my makeup collection, so it's a little easier for me to find. But yeah, the Zoeva Precious eyeshadow palette is definitely one where I almost decluttered it, and then I was like, oh, but it's so stunning. And I definitely think in terms of a rosy, plummy color story, that it definitely has something nice going on. Like I said, these 2 shades I just really love. So this one, I need to go back to it. I need to use it again to confirm for myself whether it was correct to keep this around despite everything, or whether I actually should have gotten rid of it, because there's definitely part of me that feels I should have, but I couldn't. And in the moment when it was time to actually get rid of stuff, I couldn't do it. Same for this guy. Ooh, it's upside down. This is Ather Beauty. This is the Rose Quartz. And the Rose Quartz was in this year's declutter. This is one I said I would declutter this year when I did my decluttering videos. And I was going through things and I was like, I can't do it. Like this shade here and this shade, like I just like some of these shimmers in here so much. And I mean, overall, I like the Moonlight Crystal a little bit better. It was a bit more unique in my collection, but it's like, I don't need to get rid of everything that's another neutral palette essentially in my collection. I have a bunch of neutral palettes. This is like the so manyth one I have, but it is a really good formula. I really like it. The brand went defunct, but I have heard that they're making a restart. So this could be coming back. I've heard that Ather Beauty might be coming back. So if they do, it makes sense for me to have some of their products in my makeup collection. And I bought this when they were already struggling a little bit because this was a massive sale. And I do really enjoy it. I like the color story enough. I like the formula as well. It is this like softer, more everyday sort of look. So I was like, I can't get rid of it. I've only owned it for a little while. I would just be getting rid of it because it is the so manyth neutral palette in my collection, which is a good enough reason to get rid of it, but because I also enjoy it a lot. I don't just want to get rid of it just for the sake of getting rid of it. That doesn't make sense to me either. So the Ather Beauty Rose Quartz is one I decided to not get rid of in the end. An eyeshadow palette that I feel I should get rid of, but I just don't, is this guy. This is the Melt Cosmetics Waiting Room palette from the Beetlejuice collection. There is going to be a new Beetlejuice movie coming out, of course, so I'm pretty sure we're going to get another Beetlejuice collection this year from Melt if they tap into it. This is what the actual palette looks like, which I don't love. So that's why I keep the outer box. I still have the inlay. And then here is what that palette looks like. It's grays with reds. And a part of my brain wants to keep this around because it is so unique in my brain. Because it has those grays and reds. However, when I was filming my declutter this year, I was like, oh wait, but I have reds in this palette. I have reds in this palette. I now own the Chucky palette from Glamlight, which is essentially this. So is this still very unique in my collection? No. Does it get to stay? Yes. Even though this is old, even though I don't use this a whole lot because it is quite an outspoken like look if you do a look with this, but it is Melt, which is one of my favorite brands. This was more unique. I remember going out on a limb to try and find this. I never got the one with the purples and the greens because I was like, I don't think I wear that all that much. But this palette is still, like, even though the color story isn't as unique anymore, I still have, like, such great nostalgia for this. I mean, this was when Melt really got started, and they were doing everything that, and they could do no wrong in anyone's minds. And for me, this just, yeah, it's very much of its time, and I really don't need to keep this around for sure, but the Melt Waiting Room is one that I can't do it. I just can't get myself to do it. Maybe because it was also limited edition. Maybe because I had to almost fight people to get my hands on this. I definitely think that that went into it as well, but I don't need it in my life anymore for sure. But I still like it. Maybe next declutter, it might be a contender for the makeup memory box. Because I don't think I'll ever get rid of that palette, like, fully out of my life. I would definitely want to keep it for the memories. Another palette that I decluttered and then pulled back in is the Venus 3 by Lime Crime. And this was a while ago. I think in 2020 or 2021, I was like, oh, I'm just a bit over my Lime Crime palettes. I have plenty. I don't need this one. I've got a similar color story in my Soul Blooming from Nabla. So I don't need to keep this around. So I had decluttered it. I think it was around the time where I was really getting into cool tones. And at the minute, I'm a little bit more into warm tones, so I'm really happy that just because I ended up loving cool tones so much, and my love for cool tones will always continue, but it's good to have a couple of other things as well. So I'm so happy I ended up keeping this one around, because I have gone back to it several times since pulling it back in. and it's just such a good one. It is very similar to the Nabla Soul Blooming indeed, but it also has a couple of special things. I feel that this is a little bit more taupe than you might expect. It's got some really pretty like rosiness in here. I like the purples in here. The only thing I probably don't love is this like coral shade, but everything else works really well. And if I stick, like if that rosy coral shade is covered up, I like it well enough. But when I was using this, I actually went out of my way to use that rosy coral shade, and it actually was fine on me. So it's one of those things where you get it inside your brain that something may not be right for you, but then when you actually use it, you're like, oh, it's actually not that bad. And I was able to pull a stunning look out of it again this year when I went back to it in May, and that's why I definitely think this is good. It's gonna stick around. Another contender for a makeup memory box for sure by now, because this has some nostalgia behind it, especially because I almost declutter it. Like, it was definitely sitting in a box in another part of my house for like a good couple of months. And then I remember thinking, where's that Lime Crime palette one day? And I was like, oh, I decluttered it. And then I had to pull it back in. So that's definitely how it works for me as well with declutter piles. I don't only go through it again before I get rid of things, but it's sort of like if I keep a box of stuff, I also do this with clothing I declutter. If I don't think about having that item, if it's not like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, then, you know, I know that it's okay for me to get rid of it. But if it's something that I declutter and then a couple of months later I'm like, where's that sweatshirt? Or what did I do with that lipstick? And I'm like, oh wait, I decluttered it. So I still always keep my declutter pile around for a couple of weeks, sometimes months in the case of this year, where I just keep those products sitting out and about, and I can just pull things out if I do have that train of thought, because as I mentioned, sometimes you just get caught up in the decluttering of things. This one I decided to keep this year. I have decluttered all of my other Juvia's Place 6 pans, save for this one. And the only reason it gets to stay is because of that one shade here, which tells me that I should get rid of this. You know what I mean? But again, I can't. This is one where I go back and forth, umming and ahhing about, should I get rid of this? Yes or no? Is this something that's perfect for me? Is it not? It's one of those things where I'm like, for now, it gets to stay. I love a mauve tone, but again, rosy tones isn't something I'm super into at the minute. However, I'm suspecting maybe in a couple of months or maybe a year down the line, I could all of a sudden get a craving for nothing but rosy tones. So I don't want to get rid of all the rosy tones just because they're old, because just like with the Lime Crime Venus 3, I tend to then immediately go like, oh, but wait, didn't I have that palette somewhere? And then I want it back in my life. So the Lime Crime, the Juvia's Place, the Mauves is another one of those. Next up is another set of palettes where I feel I should just declutter them, but part of me just really doesn't want to, and another part of me is like, you should get rid of these. And they're by the Oden's, and they are the Oden's Eye Christmas palettes that they did a couple of years ago. I'm actually wearing Oden's Eye on my eyes today, it's just not these palettes. So if you want to see what look this is, then definitely stay tuned for another video that's going to come live in a couple of days. And these two, yeah, if you follow my channel, you know what my issue is with these. I like Oden's Eye as a brand. I think they do some really nice things, but their formula is not very consistent. So it really depends on the batch, whether you're going to get a good palette or a not so great palette. Yet they do really interesting color stories. I have gone back to these to test my theory again. And again, as pretty as this is the Christmas Eve. Super stunning color story. Really special shades in there as well. And here is what the Merry Christmas looks like. This is the more warm-toned one. And I especially think as companion palettes, they work really well. But because Oden's Eye is so wishy-washy, I haven't really bought from them since. I've bought one or two things just to give them a try, to see if I was right, and I feel that I am. So the older things from Oden's Eye that are still in my collection, I like a lot more than I do this, which is a little bit sad for sure. But these two, because they were the first palettes where I was really like, wait, why is everybody raving about these? Because I don't like these at all. That was definitely how I felt. I just really think that they're in my collection so I can talk about this and talk about my feelings, but it's not as if I'm like super excited to go back to these and try them all the time, because they're just not a great formula for me. So would they be better off being decluttered? Yes. Did they still hold some sort of purpose in terms of like content creation? Also yes. And that's why I can't get rid of them, but I think I definitely should. Similar vein, a palette I just don't use very much is the Baroque from ColourPop. This is one of the very few ColourPop color stories that I haven't messed with. In case you're unfamiliar with my makeup collection, I tend to reorganize eyeshadow palettes if they're not right for me. I tend to even take a hairdryer to them and like take the pans out and reorganize it. I've done it with a lot of my palettes, and a lot of ColourPop as well, because they are a lot of the times magnetized, so they're very easy to rearrange. But the Baroque, I've always felt, is a little bit more special. First, there is the outer packaging with these gorgeous floral designs. I just love it. The gold in the middle. And then also this super unique color story that I don't think any other brand has ever done since then. So the Baroque, I love. It's also very one note and not something I reach for all the time. It is definitely a pretty grungy, like blue, gray, sort of, there's a couple of like duochrome moments in here as well. But the looks I can do with it are quite boring. It's just dark. So looks-wise, usability-wise, the Baroque from ColourPop isn't necessarily my favorite. However, because it is so unique, because I haven't seen many other brands doing something like this, and because it comes in gorgeous packaging, I keep it around. Is that a good enough reason? I don't think so. This is definitely where the hoarder tendencies are coming in. However, I cannot for the life of me get rid of this. Again, maybe this is just one that needs to end up in a makeup memory box sometime because I don't use it enough, but I definitely think I want to make an effort this year or maybe this winter to go back to it and do some looks with it again. Because yeah, this is one where whenever I look at it, whenever I pull it out, it makes me happy. It pulls a smile on my face. I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I want, especially from like ColourPop, because as affordable as they are, they repeat themselves all the time. This was truly something special, so they can do it if they put their minds to it. So that reminder to myself is also a good one to have, I think. But yeah, it's just not one that I really get the use out of. So that's why I'm like, should I not? Always onto minds about this one for sure. But yeah, I do really enjoy the ColourPop formula. So I know I like it when I do it, when I reach for this and when I use it, I know I'm going to like it. It's just, I have one of those collections where usability isn't necessarily like the main reason why I have something. It's not my aim to try and use up eyeshadow palettes and like hit pan and do all that. I just like trying out new things and seeing if there's anything that I enjoy, and I do really enjoy it. I think it's a very special palette, but usability-wise, I just don't really get the use out of it. Another palette I'm very much into minds about is the Enchanted by Sigma. Newsflash, I did order the Cool Neutrals. It's finally came to Beauty Bay, so it should be here in the next couple of weeks. Sigma is an eyeshadow formula that I enjoy, but it's not my favorite. It's like, it's good, but it's not the best eyeshadow I've ever worked with. You know what I mean? It's nice, it's good, it's decent, but for the price point, I find it quite pricey. They are very much US centered as well, not only because they are from the US, but it tends to take a while for Sigma products to be available in other territories, which I'm like, if you're announcing that you're launching a new palette, I just want it to be released everywhere and not have to wait like 3 months after a release to get it. A bit of a pet peeve of mine. The Enchanted is one of the first Sigma palettes I tried, and I've always mentioned how I like this side of the palette, but I don't really like these. I like this, I don't like those. For me, great fall palette. I've gone back to it. I like the looks I get out of it. It's definitely cool. It's got some unique shades. It has a really stunning dark green. And that's kind of the reason why it gets to stay. The dark green. The dark green matte in this is the only reason why I feel this stands out in my makeup collection in any way, shape, or form. And it's one where I'm like, so many times I've thought I should just get rid of it. I only use half the palette. I always do the same single look with it whenever I use it, if I go back to it. But I do really enjoy that look. And the last time I used this, I remember I did something a little bit out there, because I believe I did a look with these greens and then the gold. And this kind of gold is usually not my favorite. It's far too yellow. But there was just something about it, using it with the greens, that I really liked. So even though I always say only like half this palette, there are parts of the half of the palette that I don't really enjoy that do complement the shades in the side of the palette that I do enjoy. I don't know, maybe this just should have gotten a different layout, or there's just something about this palette that makes me not love it as much as everybody else does. And because I was so underwhelmed with this when I first tried it, I definitely stayed away from Sigma eyeshadow until they did the new mod. I didn't try any of their other palettes. So with Sigma, I feel they do nice things, but it's not like, whenever I've tried it, I've always been a little bit like, nah, it's okay. It's okay. So just because something is, nah, okay, doesn't mean I need to like declutter it. It's not bad makeup at all. But I definitely felt that the Sigma, I think I wanted more from it. Maybe also because it's like, you know, Urban Decay Naked sort of price point. It's like 55 euros. So that in my brain, I sort of work it up to be as good as that is. And then it just kind of wasn't for me. So I like it, but I think they should be cheaper. Is that mean to say? And then another palette that I keep around because it's got a gorgeous color story, but I don't really get the use out of it. This was also a limited edition. It's by Beauty Bay. It's called the Book of Magic. And I don't even love the Beauty Bay formula. And yet I keep trying them. There is a part of my brain that goes, Micah, one day you're going to fall in love with the Beauty Bay eyeshadow formula. And this was the first one I think I tried by the brand. I had the Opulence, which I decluttered, the Wilderness, which I've taken shades out of because I didn't love the rest of the palette. I've tried the Metamorphic, which was okay, but there's just something about these shimmers that I don't love, and yet this gets to stay every single year. Last year I said I would declutter it after filming my blue, green, purple palette. Did I do that? Of course not. Because I just ended up putting this back into my makeup collection instead of getting rid of it like I should have. But then I look at it again and I'm like, oh, but these are my shades. This is me in a palette. You get a little bit of warmth. It goes super cool tone. You get greens, you get blues, you get purples, you get a duochrome, you get a really stunning navy. I mean, it has everything I could possibly want in a palette. It's just not in a formula I love, but I love the color story. Speaking of keeping trying Beauty Bay palettes, together with the Sigma new cool neutrals, which I found on there, I decided to get their new smoky palette. The set that Beauty Bay has, they do a really big one and they do a small one. And I asked whether anyone would be interested in hearing my thoughts. And some of you were like, yeah, sure, we want to get an update on how you feel about the Beauty Bay smoky, I think, neutral, cool tone, neutral, whatever. They're cool tones. I'll take one for the team and try it. So you'll hear my thoughts on that, and I'll show it to you in a video when I have them in. I just placed the order the other day, so it's not going to be here anytime soon. Because ever since Brexit, I think from Beauty Bay, it takes like a good 3 weeks for things to get here. But yeah, the Beauty Bay formula is one I'm not yet willing to give up and like call it a day and say, no, I don't like this. And the Book of Magic is one I keep around for that reason. I know, it's terrible. Finally, another thing from this year's Declutter that I pulled. The Persona Identity 2. Because I used my Identity 1 again. I was like, but I love the formula. And this has jewel tones. But it also doesn't really make a lot of sense in my brain in terms of a color story. I mean, essentially you get like two browns down here, a black, this cranberry shade. This is very orange, and that's one of the reasons why I don't love this more than I do, because this is such an orange shade, and it's essentially like the only true crease shade. Like everything you would do to deepen up a look or set up a look is warm toned in here. Yet my favorite shades are the green and this like coolish bluish purple. This needed a taupe, this needed a gray, it needed a dark chocolate brown. That wasn't like this. This is more like a coffee brown. It has a lot of red. So I just feel that color story wise it doesn't really come together, but the jewel tones in here. The jewel tones are just so stunning. And I know I love the Persona formula, and Persona is so difficult for me to get. I mean, this cost me an arm and a leg to get to me. And then I'm like, you know what? I should just soldier on with this one. It's okay if this sits in my makeup drawer unused for a while. I know, again, like with the warm tones and the rosy tones that I've just explained, there's gonna be a point in my life where I want to use nothing but jewel tones for like a good 2 to 3 months. And this palette is going to come in handy. I just know it. I'm not sure if I've justified my reasons for keeping some of these around very well, but that's just how my brain works. Sometimes I'm like, yes, I want to declutter this. This no longer serves a purpose in my makeup collection. Or there are products where I'm like, this no longer serves a purpose in my makeup collection. I should declutter this. And then I don't. Yeah, because either I pull them or I feel a little bit nostalgic about it, or it just is so unique that I feel I have never seen a brand do something else again, even though I don't really use it. So, but yeah, I really hoped you enjoyed watching this video today. I know it was a little bit differently than what I normally do for this video, but I was like, there's only so many like old palettes that I can still talk about in this video. And this way I thought I could give it like a slightly different spin of things that I wanted to declutter and then I didn't, or that I know I should declutter and then I never do for, I know, not really good reasons, but this is what's going on in my brain. Oh well. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for being here. Thumbs it up if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.